the principle before personality policies of our program, our suggestions of our program are like really cool. And when you learn that way and you commit to live that way, then it really helps you to treat people with kindness no matter where they're at.
Yeah.
And then it became a funny I'm like, okay, I wonder how long it's going to take her to realize I'm Emily, that Emily.
That's funny because I was doing the same thing, but I was like, I just won't say anything.
We went a few months without saying anything to each other. We had a cake fight in my house.
Yes. I was like, I remember Emily slamming my head into a gate. And then I don't really remember anything else. Welcome to the Samantha Parker Show, an unfiltered and slightly unhinged look at what happens when you ditch the booze but keep the good stuff. I'm your sober bestie, Sam. Whether you're sober curious, counting hours to that 24-hour chip, or a seasoned sober bestie, we're here to spill the tea on how to live your best life sober. We're setting boundaries, chasing dreams, and living life to its fullest. Just doing it with mocktails now. And honestly, it's a whole vibe. Life doesn't stop when you get sober. We might be on a sober journey, but we are never doing it alone. Hey, my podcast and sober besties. I am so excited. I have something amazing to share with you. Sam's Sober Stack. Like many of you, I once believed sobriety was beyond my reach. Alcohol had tightly woven itself into my life, dictating actions and thoughts until I made a bold decision to reclaim control. Now I am proud to share my journey from battling hangovers and hidden struggles to achieving a sober life full of clarity and freedom. As your self-proclaimed sober bestie, I invite you to step into my world on Sober Stack, where I offer my unfiltered story and the valuable resources I've gathered along the way. Why subscribe to Sam's Sober Stack? Well, by subscribing, you'll gain access to weekly insights and updates on navigating sobriety, my exclusive 30-day printable sober journal, an engaging community where we can uplift and support each other, subscriber-only content to help enrich your journey, and of course, I'm spilling all the tea on what has worked for me, so you can implement some of these tools and resources into your own life. Sobriety doesn't have to be a solo journey. Let's share our stories, support one another, and inspire change together. Every new drop is conveniently delivered to your inbox, offering easy-to-navigate newsletter-type content filled with powerful insights geared towards your sober success. So let's do this together. Head over to thesamanthaparkershow.substack.com or go ahead and just click the link in the show notes. Now enjoy listening to this episode of The Samantha Parker Show. Okay, guys, welcome to the podcast, The Samantha Parker Show. I haven't recorded or put out an episode for a few weeks because I've been traveling.
That's cool.
And I did this thing where I decided I was just not going to be stressed or have any additional things to worry about, which it's not normally like me. So I was just like, I'm not going to post online. I'm not going to record podcasts. Fuck it. I don't care. So welcome back.
Welcome back to you.
I know. I was like, that was mostly to myself. Okay, so today's super fun. You guys know I love when we record in person. So in my office today, I have got Emily Blossom. We were just discussing, is your name really Emily Blossom?
It is now, legally.
It is now. Did you guys know you could just make up names?
You can just make it up.
So I think I knew. Okay, well, I didn't know that. But you know what my mom did? In elementary school, she was worried about, because she had a different last name than me. She was worried about it. So she just put her last name on all my elementary school stuff. So I went through school with a last name that wasn't mine.
Really?
Yeah, because my maiden name is legally Brown.
Doesn't she have to give her your birth certificate?
It was the 80s. I don't know.
We didn't care about that shit.
Yeah, it was the late 80s.
Nobody questioned shit.
Yeah, and she's like, this is her name. Which is, I always thought that was weird, but it ended up being a pain in the ass when I went to college because they're like, you don't have any school records. This isn't you.
Oh, right.
And so, but they also, that would have been the early 2000s. So I don't know how I made it work, but they were like, okay, I guess this is you.
So what name is yours?
Well, so my name is Samantha Brown and my married name is Samantha Parker.
Okay.
So yeah, but my mom, her married last name is Lovelace. So I went through school as Samantha Lovelace.
Oh, that's a cool name too.
Yeah, it was fine. It was just weird.
So you'll answer all of them?
Yeah.
That's what I do. I got 5. I'll answer all of them.
Yeah, it never bothered me until I was a little pissed off when I was registering for college.
Right.
Yeah. And I'm like, okay, well, my name is Samantha Brown. Which is also the name of a Travel Channel show. And she had her own luggage. So for a while, I got her luggage. She had her own luggage set. It was Samantha Brown.
Oh, that's kind of cool.
I know. Things you didn't need to know. But anyways, I'm so excited to have you. You are an author, an indie author.
An indie author. Uh-huh.
And you are also a fellow alcoholic.
I am a fellow alcoholic.
And you
proud to be a sober woman. Yes.
And you are a badass real estate agent.
Oh, thanks.
You're a broker. Do you prefer broker?
I'm a broker, right?
Okay, tell me the difference.
So as a broker, we kind of herd the cats. like I heard all the agents. So I am also an agent myself, but I also manage them. So when they have broker contract questions, they call me to have those questions. So when somebody gets sued, they sue the broker and the brokerage. So like, I just call myself, I just herd the cats. So like herding cats is like an impossible thing, right?
Yeah.
Because they're all independent subcontractors that have their mind of their own.
Yeah.
And I'm like trying to herd them all together to like, hey, this is how we're supposed to do things. This is best practice, best principles, and rah, rah. And I'm the cheerleader and I'm the manager and I'm the like, you can do it.
Yes.
I'm like the coach, the mentor, the one that keeps them in line with litigation, all that stuff. Yeah.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm going to give you a little professional intro. You ready?
Okay.
Today's guest is someone who's lived 1,000 lives and came out the other side full of light and radical truth. She's an author, a real estate broker, a survivor, a mom, and a total badass. I've read her books. I know the people in her stories, which was so interesting. I couldn't put it down, okay? And I am so excited to bring your voice onto the Samantha Parker Show. So welcome today, Emily.
Oh, that's such an awesome intro. I love that. Thank you.
You're welcome. So let me just give a little backstory here. So I met Emily initially so we live here in Southern Utah at a local country club that I was a member of. You were a member of, and you were the wine lady.
I ran the wine club. That was one of 5 that I ran. Yes.
You had 5 wine clubs?
I'm a true blue alcoholic, girl. I had 5.
5? Well,
Yeah.
I was like, I want to join the wine club. It's like permission to be a drunk.
Right.
You know?
It totally was. So that's why I did it. So I could find people that drank like me. Right.
No, for real though. And that's something I've learned about myself is I was always like virtue signaling. So I was always looking for people that maybe were even a little bigger drunk than me.
Oh, yeah.
So I could be like, well, at least I'm not doing that.
Right. Those became
really
my
good at
besties. Like, I'm going to hang around you because you're making me look really good.
Mm-hmm. I'm like, can you believe what she did? I don't think I ever said that about you, but
You could have.
I could have. Who knows? That was definitely the vibe. But I remember I still think you're very charismatic and you have this big bright light around you, but I was just kind of like sucked into your world. I was like, wow, she's like really amazing.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
And you do still have that.
I do. I think I have it a little brighter now. I like to think I'm not hungover as often or at all anymore. But yeah,
I know. I don't really understand like how I did it. Like I remember taking my son to the bus stop hungover, like after a wine club night. Like I can vividly remember it.
I know. I have pictures. I was just looking at this picture the other day. I literally am dropping him off at school. I am so hungover. And it's the first day of school and it's like kindergarten. So I'm leaned down and my face is bright, bright red and my hair's all wet. And I'm like smiling. Like when I look back at the picture, I'm like, nobody looks at that and goes, she looks like a wreck. Right? I look at it now and go, what the hell was I thinking? Because I knew where I was at mentally, and
I have so many memories where, my dad the other day was like, oh, remember when we hiked to da-da-da? And I was like, I do, because I was so hungover. Like, do you have a lot of those memories?
Yeah, a lot.
And I think as a high-functioning alcoholic, I was like, oh, but I still show up for everything.
Right. Right.
And
I remember when I first got sober, there was a lot of women, high-functioning women in our realm, in our business space that was like, Emily, we're not those people.
Mm-hmm.
We're not those people. Like, it was actually hard for some people in my circle to believe that I was an alcoholic. Like, I'm like, I'm not here to convince you. I'm just telling you what I'm doing. And, so yeah, it's to be high functioning. They call us the silent sufferers. And because that's what we do, we put out this face. We got our shit together, and no matter if we have our shit together or not, that's what everyone knows us as. So when things go wrong with somebody who's supposed to have their shit together, like everyone's image of you is crumbling. Like everything they knew, everything they, it's like all the facade is like crumbling.
Well, and you're also taking away like a piece of their alcoholism story too, right?
Right.
A lot of people in my circle, and I know it was the same for you, they were drinkers. So they're like, well, if you have a problem, I have a problem. But that was not going to be it. It was going to be, Emily, you're done.
Well, that's what was interesting about what they kept saying. They kept saying, Emily, we are not those people. We are not those people. I'm like, I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about me. Right. And so they just kept using the word. They put like I was holding up the mirror to like what they had going on for themselves. But I wasn't trying to do that. I was just trying to talk about me, Have
you ever thought about it this way? Like looking back, like how brave you were that you took that like first step? Because it's kind of like you were doing it for everyone else, even if they haven't realized it.
Right. I mean, there's been many moments of vulnerability along this pathway that even now there's moments of vulnerability, right? There's moments where I'm surprised when people know that I don't know things about me, like especially with the books coming out. It was like, so when somebody says, "Oh, I read your story," and it's somebody in our business world that I didn't expect, there's a moment of, oh,
Right.
the walls start to go up like, oh, I didn't expect that person to read the book. And right.
Or have you had the other day, one of my clients, and I knew his story just because someone close to me had like told me, they're like, you'll really like vibe with him. And they had told me like a little bit of his backstory. But the other day I was working with him and he goes, "I heard you were friends with Bill and Bob." And I was like, "Who the fuck is Bill or Bob?" He said that. And I was like, "Bill, who's Bill?" I'm like, "Well, that's my dad's name." And I was like, "I don't think I know a Bob." And he's like, "You do." And I was like, "Well, then just say it." Like,
right. I had that happen to me at the car dealership. I went to buy a car at the Buick shop downtown when I first got sober, and I had my coin in a keychain. And at the car dealership, he held my keys while I went to go test drive another vehicle. And when I got back, he was like, "Oh, you're a friend of Bill's." And I had the same reaction. I'm like, "Who the fuck is Bill?" I'm like, "Bill who?" Just like, "Bill who?" And he's like, "No." And he hands me the keys and he's like holding my key. And I still wasn't getting it. I'm like, "Bill who?" And I'm like, "Oh." And then it finally...
I know. I'm one of those people. I might just be like, "You're an alcoholic." I'm like, "Oh, that's me."
Yeah.
So Bill and Bob, if just to give some context here, they were the founders of AA.
Yes, Dr. Bob and Bill W.
Yes.
Right.
But I'm like, why do people say that? But I do get it. Like, it's just a way of like
our
recognizing.
Morse code of like anonymous. Right.
Yeah. I just don't know if I'm that deep into it. But anyways, okay. So I read your book and literally my husband's like, "What are you reading?" And I was like, "I'll just tell you." Cause like I literally stayed up one night till like 1 a.m. reading.
I love that.
So like invested in the story. And I think a lot of it was because I'm like, I know that person that she's talking about. I remember these like a couple events and memories. And I mean, we hadn't talked though for years, because of a drunk incident.
We had a cake fight in my house.
Yes. I was like, I remember Emily slamming my head into a cage. And then I don't really remember anything else.
All I know is I had a Costco-sized sheet cake all over my house for weeks after that.
That's been one of my worst like drunk memories. I like felt like such a horrible person. It's something I carried for a really long time. Like I still feel like that guilt. I'm a really big guilty drinker.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
I'm a blackout drinker. And yeah, that was a night that I remember for a long time.
Yeah, I was like, that was awful.
Because I freaked the fuck out. Like I came out of the shower I don't know why I was showering when I had a party going on in my house. That's question number one.
You had cake in your hair.
I had cake in my hair.
You were laughing and you were like, "I'm going to wash my hair," and then you should wash your hair.
And then I came out to a shit show of a cake fight going on in my house.
It was way too much. It was way too much. I remember being like, "This is not right." But your husband was like really the instigator.
Right. Of course he was.
Yeah.
Of course
not
he
to
was.
like put all the blame on him. So then I was like, "Well, I don't know what's right and wrong here,"
By the way, this was my third surprise birthday. My ex-husband, let's be. This was my third surprise birthday party for my 43rd year. It's
I was reading that in your book. And I was like, what the fuck? Right? Why would someone do that?
Because he's one of us, not taking his image because he just had to have a party. It was like my birthday was an excuse for him to have a party.
Well, everything was an excuse to have a party, to be honest.
Right.
Yeah. I'm like, let's meet up and talk about work, but let's do it somewhere where I know we can order 3 or 4 glasses of wine.
Right.
That was me.
Me too.
Yeah.
Me too.
Okay. But anyways, we didn't talk to each other for years after that. And then, okay, so this is the best. Okay. I feel like this was God humbling me. So the first day I walked into AA, which was May 20th, I'm almost at a year.
Wow.
Yeah. I'm almost at my year. Is that crazy?
That's a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
Good for you.
So I walk into AA on, which would have been, I think, May 21st. So it was a Monday night. I was hungover because I had gotten so drunk on Sunday. And you were sitting there and I was like, fuck this. I was like, what a fucking joke. Not like because I was mad at you or anything. I just thought like, I could see the like, when you're like, well played, universe. Well played.
Right.
But I didn't say anything. I was like, it's AA. And I was really ashamed to be there. I was in my own, pain.
Right.
Yeah.
I get it.
But what I thought was funny was you gave me the big book. And you wrote your number in it and you were like, if you need anything. And I thought that was so nice. Like you bought me a big book. But I go home and I was like, Jake, you're never going to believe who was there. And then she gave me her number. I was like, I have her number. Then I was like, maybe she'll know who I am.
I was like, for sure, I'm sure she's deleted my number.
No, I had it. Because in my head, I was the asshole,
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I didn't think you were an asshole, and I was like, that's just wild. You know what I mean? But I was just like, I was going through the AA motions. And then finally the other day, well, it was a couple months ago, I was like, asked you something about your kid. And you were like, I was wondering if you'd ever made the connection. And I was like, yeah, I definitely did.
I know, because that's our way, right? I was like, that's what's beautiful about the 12-step program is like, we are accepting of everyone where they're at. And it was humbling for me too, when you walked in, because it's like, this is somebody from my past that is coming into my life, and you don't want to meet under these circumstances, right? I mean, like the AA program is like the last house on the block. This is not a place where you want to have, you're there because like shit's gone really wrong, right?
Especially at first.
Especially at first.
Like I would say the first few months, it was like, why am I here? Like I am the worst person in the world. And now I'm just like, this is what I do. Why isn't everyone else doing this?
Right. And you were the second person in my past that came to the rooms of alcoholics, and that's what we call it, the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, that asked me, well, the first one asked me for help. And this one I had a resentment for. And, they were like, can you give me a ride to a meeting? Or I'm like, oh. And this is where the program teaches us how to extend that hand to the newcomer, how to be accepting of people coming into the program. Because the last thing I wanted for you is to not stay because I was there.
Oh.
And then having that thought process of like, shit, we're both here. And then it's like running into people that you don't want to see somewhere. I can't think of a place, like just somewhere on the street. You don't want to see them. And you're like, wait, we're both here.
There's a girl,
here, right?
There's a girl in town who does not like me at all. And I saw her in Target and I just did I left my cart.
Right.
I was like, I'm not in the mood today. I'm not in the mood for whatever you're mad at me about.
Right. So in the rooms, it's like those same kind of conflicts come up and you're just like, oh gosh. But, the principle before personality policies of our program, our suggestions of our program are like really cool. And when you learn that way and you commit to live that way, then it really helps you to treat people with kindness no matter where they're at.
Yeah.
And then it became a funny interaction. I'm like, okay, I wonder how long it's going to take her to realize I'm Emily, that Emily.
That's funny because I was doing the same thing, but I was like, I just won't say anything.
We went a few months without saying anything to each other.
No, I just went to the meetings. I was like, how are you?
Right. Well, and I got you the book because in my mind, I was thinking, I wanted you to know that like, we're cool.
Yeah.
Like it's all good.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you're here. And I hope everyone from our past finds their way, because the alternative is a slow death, right? The alternative is,
oh, absolutely,
there's going to be lots of us in the high functioning world that are not going to find their way in, and they're going to find death. And I would rather everyone find their way in and we find peace with each other than, become friends again and reseal something that we started off having a really genuine, great connection together, that we got clouded with all the alcohol. We got drowned in alcohol.
Because we were busy virtue signaling, like, who's the bigger drunk?
Who's the bigger drunk?
I'm like, oh, she, look at her.
I was definitely one of those that was, look at her, right?
I was really good at that.
I also ran pub trivia night.
I know, I went to pub trivia
town.
night. Yeah. I remember one night, like, getting so drunk at pub trivia night.
Mm-hmm.
I think you were there too, because
I was always drunk at pub trivia night.
Yeah, I remember talking to you the next day.
That's why I started it.
And what's funny in my head too is I remember thinking, like, how are all these people just running around with these huge hangovers?
Right.
So I thought maybe like I just, like my body, like I wasn't able to keep up. That was like a thing I had too in my head.
Right. Me too. Well, then I found out years later that people, they just rolled out and kept drinking in the morning. That was the trick to avoid the hangovers. You just keep drinking.
Which I never did that unless we were on like vacation.
Me too. Because we still had to show up and go to work.
Yeah.
Right.
Ugh.
Right.
I know. Well, so I just got back from, Hawaii and then the Dominican Republic. And while I was in the Dominican, my mother-in-law was like, is it hard to be around? Well, a bunch of people asked me that. Like, is it hard to be around all this, all-inclusive alcohol? And I was like, this trip, I was like, absolutely not. Like, I don't want anything to do with it.
That's good.
Like, it doesn't bother me that it's over there. I was mostly annoyed that this is how I'm going to base my trips now, though. I know you should never go to a country that doesn't have Diet Coke.
That's a good tip.
They're not.
Or soda at all. Right.
Yes. Well, they had Coke and Coke Zero.
Okay.
Which I'm like, what is with I'm like, if they don't carry Diet Coke, we're not going. That's my new philosophy.
Okay.
Because, typically in countries that don't have Diet Coke, you also can't drink the water.
That's a good theory. Yeah.
Which everyone on that trip has come back with food poisoning. So, yeah.
They didn't have Diet Coke. That's why.
I was so yeah. And so my choices were very limited,
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I went to France for a month with my ex. He was from France, right? And I went there, and do not drink soda in France. I would highly against it. Like, they don't put all the chemicals and all the good shit that we have.
I
right?
love my aspartame.
So, right? So it tasted like, it tasted like flat fizz I'm like, what the hell kind of Sprite is this?
Did you get ice in it? A lot of times too, they don't put ice in it.
No, there was no ice. Yeah, they don't do ice, but you can get their lemonade. Like, their sparkling lemonade is full, like, it's the kind of soda we're used to, full of sugar, full of shit, and like fizzy, Other than that, don't get the soda.
See?
Yeah.
Oh, I heard that according to your book, that trip to France was not great. And you should have based it on my Diet Coke theory.
I should have left. I should have never went, probably. But that was a shit show.
Okay, so when I met you, because this is in your book, and this is where I was just like, I was enthralled in it because, one, it was a really beautiful, like, just eye-opening lesson for me. I was like, so what I saw was like, you were so in love, right, with this French guy, which I do remember thinking at the time, I was like, this is odd that, like, but you were like very convincing. You were convincing everybody.
I convinced
myself. Which I think was probably a mask, yeah. You were like, we're so in love. I finally found true love. I remember you had us over for dinner and he made this beautiful, like, full fish, Yes.
No.
And I was like, they are so in love.
I was. I thought it was real, right? And I even wrote a romance novel about it. And it's a fiction romance novel because as you read my book, there's a lot of things that love story didn't last very long. But I wanted to give myself that love story because for me, it was the first time in my life that I felt truly connected. He loved bombed me to death.
Yeah.
He was so charming and
it sounds like he was pretty good at sex.
He was really good at sex.
Yeah.
Probably just sex addict.
Like walking around with a high.
I was always like, oh yeah, it was awesome. And he just showed me so much attention. And when you read my story, you realize like attention and love is what I was craving. Like it was what I still wanted.
Yeah, that's still what I want.
It's still like, I grew up in an abusive household, violent, alcoholic father. My first husband was also a violent person. My second husband, which I came out of, he wasn't an alcoholic, but we just had a lot of codependent issues with each other, right? And so, in his compliment, my second husband's compliment was more like, I'd come out of a room, we're going to go out to wine club, let's say, and he'd come out of the room and be like, oh, you're going to wear that? I guess I better go change. And I'm like, oh, I'll take that as a compliment, right? That's where I was when my third husband came into the picture, and he was just love bombing me with all that French accent and, all the charm and all the European.
He was like,
you knew him, right?
Something out of like a movie.
Right.
Yeah.
It was so believable. But that's what narcissists do. He was a narcissistic sociopath, right?
Mm-hmm.
So once he had his claws into me, and I'm the perfect codependent, I'm the fixer, I'm like going to make it work.
And you wanted to be loved.
And I wanted to be loved.
And he most likely wanted a green card.
And he most likely wanted, which I'm happy to say he never got.
Good.
Okay.
Is he back? Did he get deported?
Yeah.
Good.
Not deported, but he left on his own accord. But if he hadn't, he would have been.
It would have been better.
It would have been better. Yeah. So but for that first year of our relationship, like, it was a love story that I felt that I deserved to have. Like, I said at an event where, because, the hard truth is we love people who hurt us, right? And so, but our society doesn't always let us be okay. So I said at a dinner, I think I talked about it in the book, I said at a dinner party one time, like, I loved them all. I loved my father. I loved my first husband. I loved the second. I was married 16 years to the second husband. And the third husband, I loved him too. To say I didn't love them, or to say because they hurt me, that takes away the love. Like, that's not true, right? The reason why we always go back, and so I made that comment, and a couple of the women at the table were like, Emily, shame on you. You shouldn't be saying that. You shouldn't be talking about that. You shouldn't be saying, look what he did to you. And like, I know what he did to me. He almost killed me, right?
Okay.
I know what he did. But that doesn't take away that I loved him. Right? And you were there. You saw the whole, I was in love.
Oh, absolutely.
Whether it was real for him or not, it was real for me. It was as real as I've ever seen.
It was real for him, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, he was definitely using.
Definitely. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But I wouldn't just like wash that as like there was no love, you know?
Yeah. So I wrote a romance novel about it, and I hired a ghostwriter to help me to fill in the fiction part because I didn't want to get down the road of the reality of what came of that relationship, the abuse and all that stuff. I wanted to leave it that charming story. So like one of my girlfriends in our area read the romance stuff. She's like, oh my God, I know these people. And
that was me.
Even with the ghostwriter,
like, she was like, what are you doing? And I'm like, this book's about us. But it wasn't, you know?
Right. You know, and then she was like, wait, who's the Hal guy in the story? That's the only character she couldn't figure out. And it was a client of mine that I had a relationship with.
Oh, that's in your book.
Yeah.
In the one I read. But you have, okay, so let's talk about your books real quick. Though.
Yeah.
So, well, you have like basically like, I always call it mommy porn.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I do.
Yeah. So you've got one of those. And then this is the one I've read, this Mental Mayhem.
Mental Mayhem is book 1 of my memoirs.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. It is really awesome.
This is about the parallels of those 3 abusive relationships.
Yeah. So for you guys listening, the book is really great because it talks about, so it flips between like you in childhood, which was mind-blowing, Emily. Like there was parts where I was like, wow, I had no idea that this was your life. And it's not for like a pity party, but I'm like, this lady is fucking strong.
Thank you.
That's crazy what you went through.
It was a lot.
Yeah. And I think when you came into my office, what did we have? Just like a little hangout session?
Yeah.
Not so long ago?
Yeah.
And I was like, were you really like stealing cars? Like, I mean, did you really go to jail? And then it sounded like you went to like a halfway house as a teenager.
I went to a children's home, an orphanage, children's home, technically is what it was, for 6 months. And I went to rehab. But at 15.
That was like, sounded like your good times though.
Right. I mean, yeah. I mean, the second rehab I went to at 15 years old. So I like to say like I was a low bottom drunk and a high bottom drunk, right? Like, so my first time with alcohol, I started drinking at 13. And by the time I was 14, 15 years old, I was a runaway on the streets of Manchester, New Hampshire, where I grew up, my sister and I. And we did a lot of crazy shit that runaways on the street do. You know, my boyfriend was 19. I was 13. Which was my first husband, right? So that's another whole...
yeah, you end up marrying him.
I end up marrying him years later. And we just did a lot of crazy ass shit. And how I ended up in rehab, it talks about in the story, is I lost my virginity in a shack.
Yeah.
And with other people there. Like, this is normal.
Mine on my waterbed where my parents were out of town when I was 16.
Good for you. That's way more comfortable.
No, it wasn't though, because I couldn't figure out what was going on, you know?
Right. I didn't really know what was going on either.
I was like, did we just have sex? I don't know.
Yeah. And so I was cleaning myself up, like my sister knew what was happening. My sister was there and I'm like, what do I do? You know? And she was like, okay, we had to go find a bathroom, and we ended up in a church hall, you know, and, you know, I forget how we got in, but we didn't get in a good way, you know? So they called the police, and the police came while my sister and I are in the church rectory bathroom trying to clean me up from the night before. And that started me on a path. I ended up in rehab, and it was a 28-day program, and I stayed for 90 days because after I realized I wanted help, I needed help. Like, I didn't want them to let me go.
Yeah.
And so in rehab back in the 90s, well, this is 1988. Like, it wasn't like rehabs today where, you know, they get to drive you around on field trips. Like, it was like lockdown, isolation. I'm in an institution. I'm a flight risk. So they like lock the key. Like, you're not going anywhere.
So more like psych ward.
It's psych ward.
Yeah.
And matter of fact, we shared it at the psych ward, right? Because how many teenagers are in rehab in the 80s?
That's why I was reading this and I was like, this is wild.
Right. It was crazy. And so, yeah. So then I didn't want to go home. I grew up in the projects, and I didn't want to go back.
Yeah.
You know? And so they sent me to this orphanage children's home, and I met some of the most amazing kids and people that have been through worse stuff than I've been through. And I'll never forget those kids. And I don't know where they are today, but I just pray that they found, you know, hope, and that they found a good life for themselves. But the chances are probably not. But
yeah,
I like to think of them like in my brain, I like to think of them as like they had a success story, but
I bet that some of them do.
Yeah. But in that children's home, Dover Children's Home I was at, I was the first time I had a dream I wanted to be an author and a writer, and I wanted to tell my story. But, when you're 14 or 15 years old, like you still got a lot of lights. I had a lot of life left to
and back
live.
then too, where you're going to like write it on paper,
Right. Right.
I think, yeah.
Right. Which is a lot of challenges with writing, and I wasn't super educated, so I stayed sober for 3 years back then and went back to high school, graduated high school, got accepted to community college, started college, ended up in Florida.
Yeah.
All those things. And then a counselor of mine told me that I was seeing that she thought that didn't really have an alcohol problem, that she thought I had a behavior problem. And then I was just a child of an alcoholic. And that's like the perfect storm for somebody to tell you as an alcoholic. I'm like, yeah, that's what I was thinking. Yeah.
Oh, I know.
That's got a behavior problem.
It goes back to what I was saying. Like, you like it when people are more drunk than you.
Right.
You're like, perfect.
And so then I started with, this is where all my rules came in. So book 2 is about.
Okay. So I need to get that book.
Yeah. You need this book. Matter of fact, you can have this one.
Oh, can I? I can order it on Amazon.
No, I'll give time.
Okay. Will you sign it?
I would love that.
I had the intention to bring the book I read, like the book I own, in so you could sign it. But again, I don't really have a brain. I'm still on vacation brain.
I know. You just got back. I was even questioning if you were going to make it back.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, we were too. I'm going to do a whole podcast on that shit show of a trip.
I can't wait to hear it. Yeah. So book 1 is about the parallels of the 3 abusive relationships, which is my dad, my first husband with a 19-year-old that I met on the streets, right? And then my third husband, the French man, right?
Yes.
But there's a 20-year gap between the first husband and the third husband, and that's what this book is about. So book 2 is about a road. So when I went to Florida after graduation and I married the 19-year-old, right? He had gone to Florida, and that whole story is in here. And I followed him because that's what us codependents do, right? Mm-hmm. And so I started changing my life, though. Like I started reinventing myself, and Florida gave me that opportunity. And I talk about how, my higher power at the time I called God. I don't call it God anymore, but I did then.
Okay, hold on. Let's stop and talk about this for a second, okay? Because I love this. I get a lot of like DMs on TikTok that people are like, will you go to AA? I don't want to go because it's religious. And what I say is, and I don't tell your story, but I say, anyone can say anything. I know a girl in AA who has a random name for her higher power.
Excuse me.
And I think it helps, like I'm not,
I don't know why my higher power is choking right there.
She's like, it's not, Angel.
She's like, it's not right.
But I mean, it's because I'm trying to be a little bit,
right.
I'm just like trying to show people like, I believe in God. And so I'll say that. I said, but the people at AA believe whatever they want to believe.
Right. I get to have a higher power of my own choosing. Right. So I developed Rose. I call her, right? Which my tattoo is that says Rose knows, because when I look down at that, I think, my higher power knows. She's got the bird's eye view, right? So I just have to trust, Mm-hmm. So I call her Rose in the collective. And so the collective part is like, I believe in spirituality, in this connection of that we are all one.
Yeah.
And that we're all connected. Collective consciousness. Mm-hmm. But that's my higher power.
Yeah.
So you hear me talk about it all the time in the rooms, like talk about Rose. And
I loved it. The first time I heard you say that, I was like, wow, that's cool.
Oh, thanks.
Because I was having a hard time at first being like, I have to put myself in this pinhole box.
Right.
And I mean, we live in Utah. So it's like in my head, I was screaming like the only example of religion I've ever had is Mormonism. And I'm like screaming like, I do not want that box.
I do not want that. Right.
Yeah. So I was like, oh, this is cool. So I get to discover what God is for me.
Right. That's the cool thing. And well, I like to call myself a recovered Catholic too, right? So I grew up Catholic in New England. And I mean, that's what, mostly is predominant in that area is for religion is Catholicism, which is probably equal to, or, they all have, all the religious denominations have, and here's the thing with all of them, right? Here's what I found in studying, I've studied a little theology, is like, they all have love. Right. So at the intention of all of them,
the core of it is great.
Right.
The core of it is great. It's
but
the rules.
The problem with them is that they have people inside.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
And we all become corrupt on power and control and, how we interpret.
Well, so right now they're voting, is that the word, on a new pope.
Oh, yeah.
Do they vote or whatever they do?
I heard that.
And it's so funny to me to watch the TikToks about it because literally it's like almost like the NFL draft. Like they're putting up like their age and their stats and like,
oh, they are? I got to check into that.
Yeah, it's like a whole thing. It's like a whole thing going down.
Okay. Well, I didn't.
It might have already happened, but so I'm not following it that close.
All right. I'll have to check in. I didn't know they did all that. Matter of fact, this guy's probably been the Pope since I've been.
No, I don't think
when did he become the Pope?
He wasn't. We're going to sound so dumb. I don't think he was the Pope super long.
I don't
because
know.
I can remember the last time they did this, where they do the smoke thing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, anyway.
So anyways, enough about that. Anyways, got her own tube rating.
Right. So I went to Florida, and my first real connection of spirituality with my higher power was that I was walking on the beach. And I talk about that in this story, talking about I was walking on the beach. I didn't want to go to Florida. I didn't want to. I didn't want that to be the answer, but I was walking and I just said to my higher power, I'm like, hey, if I'm supposed to be in Florida, if this is my path, let me find a heart-shaped shell while I'm here today. Because Clearwater Beach, I was down there visiting.
Mm-hmm.
And Clearwater Beach is like full of crushed shells. And I thought, but you're not going to find a heart-shaped one.
Oh, I bet you did.
But I did. That's how I ended up there. and so there's a cool story around that. So I ended up going there. And then I divorced him at 24. I have 2 kids in tow, didn't finish college. And that's what this cover is about with the Ford Escort 6x9 U-Haul trailer with my whole life inside. Like a 6x9 trailer is all my life had. You know what I mean? 24 years old, 2 little babies in the back seat. My sons were 3 and 1. No, I'm sorry, 2 and 4. And I'm like a single mom at 24 years old. And all I've known is violence to this point in my life.
That's what I was a single mom at 21.
Yeah. And it's really real, right? Mm-hmm. So I was driving across country, having this moment, driving from Florida to New Hampshire, having this moment like, what the fuck am I going to do? Like, all I know, how am I going to prevent these boys from becoming violent people? How am I going to prevent, like, I don't know anything about how to raise kids or how to, I mean, my past is nothing but riddled with violence and addictions and mental illness. And like, I don't know how I'm going to do this, but I had this fire inside of me started, I got to break the cycles of abuse and addiction. And so on that road trip, I had these spiritual moments with my higher power. Like it literally took me, it's a funny story because it literally takes 18 hours to drive from there, the minimum, right? 18 to 24. And it took me 4 days because my grandpa rerouted me up. They didn't want me to go on the Jersey Turnpike with the U-Haul. So I ended up in Pennsylvania. It ended up being this.
This is before MapQuest.
Yeah, this is before GPS. Yes. And I talk about that.
Yeah,
I had to do check-ins. We had flip phone, we had dumb phones, and no
at least
GPS.
You had a phone.
I did have a phone, but we didn't use them like back then unless you stop. Like nobody used them in the car. You know what I mean?
No, I remember my grandma had one. It was like a box, and she had it in the car because she owned a floral shop. So she bought one of the first cell phones so they could get a hold of people.
Right. So that's like what I had, and I would check in with grandpa at the end of it. But that 4-day road trip was the perfect analogy to my life because I started off with this fire, like I'm leaving his ass. I'm not looking back, blah, blah, blah. And I'm going to break all these cycles. I'm going to do all this stuff and I'm going to rule the world. Just watch me get the fuck out of my way. Right. Like this is I'm going to rule the world. And then by day 3, I'm like, so maybe I should return his phone call. Like maybe, those,
you forget
those moments of like, I'm not going to be able to be a single mom. How am I going to? I literally had like $200 to my name.
Mm-hmm.
Like my family was helping me get home. Like I was staying in roadside trucker stops and eating McDonald's and like shuffling my kids in. We slept with the lights on at these trucker stops because there were roaches and like, and I talk about that. Like I couldn't afford myself, never mind 2 kids. And then how am I going to change my world and my life? And I did, looking back, like I did it. So that's what book 2 talks about. And it talks about that gap of the calm in the storm, I call it. Like I had this hurricane running in my violent life, right? And then I had this calm where I raised these boys and I got in real estate and I have these great self-help junkie moments where I'm like doing it. And then when you are as sick, that saying they say in the rooms about being as sick as your secrets, I closed the door on my childhood, my violent past. I never talked about it. I just started climbing the corporate ladder and I'm going to be somebody and I'm going to prove to him I'm worth loving, but, and my second husband, he'll find out more about my life by reading the books than I ever talked to him about.
Oh, really?
Because I closed the door.
There's some things that my husband will be like, I didn't know that happened to you. And I'm just like, we're not talking about it.
We're not talking
about it. Yeah.
But you're only as sick as your secrets. And so what happened, like, it's no surprise that third husband came around.
Yeah.
And I got PTSD, and I'm now diagnosed chronically PTSD because
I'm sure you have complex PTSD just from reading your childhood,
I got shit.
Yeah.
Here's what's crazy. When I married my third husband, we were sitting out back on the deck drinking, of course. That was our life. And all of a sudden I started telling stories about my dad and my childhood. And I'd be like, why am I talking to you about this?
Like, he was triggering.
His behaviors were
triggering because your dad sounds again, I've read the book, you guys. Your dad was an abusive asshole.
He was an abusive asshole.
Like extreme abuse.
Yes.
Yeah.
He was. And yes. And I got the brunt of that because I was the tough one, right? Out of my siblings, I was the tough one. And so I think when you're a child of an abusive situation, you get that fight or flight syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
And my siblings, some of them, like, you either decide you're going to fight or you're going to fly, right? And my older sister, and I talk about her in here, she flew inside of herself, right? She wasn't emotionally or mentally able to handle what was going on in our childhood. So she ended up getting multiple personalities, schizophrenia. Like, she withdrew inside, and these other alter ego people came out of her to protect her, right? She dealt with it by withdrawing. I dealt with it like, come hell or fucking high water, SOB. And I was the one in the family that stood my ground eventually to him and told him exactly what I thought. But I also found forgiveness for my dad later. And I talk about that in book 2 too.
I need to read book 2.
You need to read book 2.
I loved your first book because as an alcoholic, it's so helpful that you're sharing these stories. And if you guys can hear in the background, they're painting a mural outside of my window. So it's a little loud. Yeah. It's like beep, but I don't know if you guys will be able to hear it. But if you do, that's what it is. It's really pretty though.
It is gorgeous.
It's massive. Yeah. Anyway, I loved it because, I always say this. I'm like, I love when other alcoholics share their stories because then I don't feel like I'm just on stupid island,
Right.
But also I'm like, I would love that you were an alcoholic,
Right.
So, but I appreciate that you shared your story. And so when you guys read her first book, it'll like flip back and forth. So it goes from childhood and then it goes to, or do you say your husband? I know you give him a code name in there.
Yeah. I mean,
I was like, what name are we saying?
In the book, his name is Gaston.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which is funny. I'm reading it. I'm like, that's not his name.
But I like everybody I talk to, I'm like, well, their real name is,
Yeah. I was like, I didn't know if we were saying his real name. And then it flips to that, which when you were talking about when you guys went to Scottsdale and he like basically tried to kill you.
And we were divorced by then.
Oh, you were divorced when you went to Scottsdale? I was just reading it. I was like, I had no idea that you guys went through all those things.
Right.
I just figured I knew he wasn't with you because I'd seen him at the bar scene.
Right.
And I knew that like you guys weren't together because I'd seen him about with other girls, like,
Well, that might not have been the tall tale. I mean, we might have still been together.
True. Very, very true.
Because there was a lot of that going on.
Well, and then I was like, they're obviously not together, But I was like, I didn't we've gone through all those things.
Right.
Just crazy.
He turned into a very, once we crossed that line, there's no going back.
No.
Over those lines, you know? And so we crossed that line when we got back from France, and I found out he had been cheating on me with a Spanish girl in housekeeping at the hotel. Like, they were usually, like, literally using Google Translate.
Como se dice penis in Espanol.
Right? It's like, I'm just like, really? Are you kidding me? And I had helped him, with immigration. I paid for everything. I was his sugar mama. That's the truth.
Absolutely, you were.
Right?
Yeah.
It was the PTSD came out in full rage when the day I found out about the cheating, which meant that he had been cheating on me for 8 months, and we had just got back from France celebrating our 1-year anniversary.
Maybe you should have waited till 10 years.
My love story, even though I got to keep it, was not the reality of what was really happening for him and it just wasn't. I was delusional about, and I think when all that reality came forward, I mean, my alcoholism, I mean, that was the bottom, the beginning of the bottom for me on how did I let this happen to me? How did this come full circle? And
So
it was hard for me to comprehend.
So did you get sober before you got divorced or after?
After.
After.
I got sober. So our divorce was final in February of...
Yeah, February 14th, 2020.
2020.
Which was just a great year for everyone.
The day I became Emily Blossom. Right. The COVID year. And that's what happened. Day drinking started, right? I was divorced.
That's actually the first time I went to AA was in 2020.
Okay.
Yeah.
I did not go in 2020. So my sobriety date is 1/4/21.
Well, yeah,
so
I was only sober
year,
for like 45 days or something.
Yeah.
You know?
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was day drinking after the divorce and homeschooling my son, feeling sorry for myself, like with the world.
Well,
and
everyone was like, just put wine in your cup. It was weird.
Right.
Yeah. I don't know why we were all doing that. We were numbing.
We had a moment of numbing. Right. So the Scottsdale thing, when he almost killed me in Scottsdale, that was in September of 2020. So we were already divorced. But what happened was I drunk dialed him in April. You know those moments where you're like, the truth, I was like lonely, drinking on my patio by myself.
Yeah.
Drunk and like, hey.
Want to get some.
Hey. Mm-hmm. Right. He was really good at that part.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but he came back and he didn't leave. Like, I thought we were just going to have a one night. Thank you. Thanks for coming.
Thanks for the dick.
Yeah. No, he did not leave. And he ended up staying there. And that's probably the time that you saw him. So what was the final draw with him? And Scottsdale was not the final draw. I like to say that it was, but it wasn't.
Yeah.
Christmas, what was the final draw was this suddenly moment. Christmas, I'm drunk off my ass again. So is he. We're doing Santa Claus deal. You know what I mean? And like 3:00 in the morning, he decides he's going to sit me down and have a serious conversation. And he's like, baby, I've been honest with you since March of 2020. I'm like, first of all, we barely talked in March of 2020. We were divorced.
Congratulations.
Right? So my drunk brain is going, wait, what? And so he's like, I've been honest with you. So the year of 2020, even though we did all this day drinking, he didn't leave my house. We were sleeping with other people. We weren't together. And so I was with other people. He was with other people. That's probably when you saw him at all the bar. And I'm like, I had this come to Jesus moment of like, this is the year. You've been honest with me. This is as honest as this is going to get. And I just looked at him with this stone cold sober face. And I just said, get the fuck out.
Yeah.
And he goes, what do you mean? Wait, no, you don't understand. And I said, yeah, I understand. This is as good as it's going to get. You need to get the fuck out. And he left. He's like, you're fucking crazy. All this blah, blah, blah. You're crazy. Da, 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 da. And off he went. And it's been ever since. And then I got sober. I had another big episode on New Year's that year of a drunken mess that I just caused, incomprehensible demoralization, they say, right? Like, and I was like, this isn't just about him. This is me.
Yeah.
This is my deal.
Yeah. Mine wasn't like I got a DUI. I should have, though, because I don't remember driving home that day. But it wasn't like the first time I'd done that. Like, I don't have some big,
Right. I didn't have that.
No one was telling me to stop drinking. It was just, I'm fucking enough of this.
Enough. And it took me 3 days to get off the couch. That's why my sobriety date is 1/4. Right. This was a New Year's shindig. And it took me 4 days to drag my ass in there and admit that I was an alcoholic to myself and others. And so, yeah, I haven't turned back since then. But yeah, that whole year was a shit show of drinking and madness.
That's awesome. Okay. So, but now I remember you just got your 3-year chip.
No, I picked up 4.
4? Oh, it was 4.
4 years. I'm working on my 5th year coming around.
Well, that's way bigger than 3.
4 years. 4. I was just looking at this on my phone the other day. It's almost 4.5 years.
That's amazing.
It'll be 4.5 in July.
Does it start to just feel like an integrated part of your life? I mean, it does for me. I can tell you,
it's way easier to stay sober than to get sober.
Yeah.
Like that part's way easier. Like my first year was hell. Like it just, because you're it's not the drinking part. Like the obsession to drink went away in the first 90 days. Like I didn't think that would go away, but it did.
Same, because I was so hyper fixated on it.
Yeah. And so that went away. But what you don't realize is like how much you've orchestrated your whole life. like around it. And it's like finding how to live sober, you just have to change everything. They say that in AA, right? You have to change one thing and that's everything. And that's what I had to do.
It's, we're really built around our habits. So I tell people this too. I'm like, well, if that's what you do on Thursday, I was a big thirsty Thursday. I was like, oh, I've made it to Thursday. I haven't had a drink for 3 days, So I was like, oh, we're going to get drunk on Thursday night. So I knew like Thursday nights, like I needed to do something else. So then I started taking myself to yoga, which I hate. I don't go to yoga anymore, but it was like, I had to do something different. Like even I've even just had to drive around in my fucking car before.
Right. And that's what I spent my whole first, and actually the second year, I hate to break it to you, the second year is harder. Yay. The second year was harder because now you're in this, okay, you spent the first year getting sober, right? And like fixing habits, coming up with new things.
Well, you're almost like you got a big shiny gold star. I'm sober.
Yeah.
And now I'm kind of over myself. I'm like, cool.
Yeah. So when you're approaching year 2, you're like, okay, now what? Right? Like now you're actually got to do this deal every single day. Like this is you start realizing that this is a lifer, right? Yeah. This is a do or die. And you're like, okay, one of the girls in the room said to me in my early sobriety, which has sat with me ever since, which she says, Emily, it's not just about living a sober life. It's about living a sober life.
Ooh.
And I've thought about that. Like if I have to love it, like there's one thing, like you go through the motions of it, but if I have to love it, what does it have to look like? Well, it had to look different than even my first year, because I'm like, if I have to love it, I got to make changes. I got to keep making changes. I got to keep finding what works for me. I mean, I wrote my books.
Yeah.
In sober life. And, and I don't know if I was more addicted to men or drinking, right? So I also had to go celibate for a while. They recommend a year. Well, I had my first boyfriend in AA. I did not wait.
You're not, I've heard from the ladies, you're not supposed to do that.
You're not, but I'm a rule breaker. I play in the gray.
Or you're like, we're different.
We're different. I can do it. This is true love. This is, yeah. And so that did not work out, obviously. He just turned out to be like all the others, but, and even he realized it. Even he was like, I'm kind of seeing some relatability here. So I'm like, yeah, me too. That's a little, it's my pattern, right? So I have been single for 3 years now. And so I keep that date. So in May, Memorial Day weekend, it'll be 3 years of no boyfriend.
No boyfriend.
Which is almost a bigger sobriety date than 4 years of no drinking, because dropping relationships and finding that self-love and self-soothing and all of that. I mean, the first year without a boyfriend or a relationship was harder than the first year of no drinking for me.
Yeah.
And so it's been a huge growing and really finding out what it means to take care of Emily, and who Emily is. And I would have never written my books if I hadn't have been single. I would be too focused on this other person and my codependent nature,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now you need someone to come in and like match that energy.
I just want like a cherry on top. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I want somebody that just,
or maybe you don't even need someone to come in,
Yeah, I mean, it would be nice.
Yeah. But I'm just saying, like, I don't think that's going to make your life.
No. My life is pretty complete.
It's not like that's
and
what
pretty
I'm saying.
busy.
You're not like, oh, I must marry and produce heirs.
No, marriage is not happening again. 3's enough.
Never say never.
3's enough. Yeah.
I always tell people, like, I'm not going to run a marathon. And they're like, and I'm like, God, I just shouldn't talk. I shouldn't talk.
You should.
I probably will.
I'll do it with you.
A full?
Well,
because right now I don't have anyone signed up.
Let's start with a half.
Right now I can't even get myself to sign up for the half because I really enjoy running. Like, I'll go out and run like 3-4 miles. That's great.
Yeah.
I love that.
The most I can do is 4 miles right now.
Yeah. The most I can do, I could probably run. Well, I'll do like walking breaks too. I'm not real serious about my time, but I could probably do like 8.
I could probably do 8 if I could walk run.
Yeah.
If I could walk run.
Oh, yeah. I do a little walkie when I need to.
So we could get to 13. We could do 13.
Yeah. I watch.
If we can do 8, we can do 13, Sam.
I'm on the TikTok, and I watch a ton of people who run marathons, and a lot of them do a walk run.
Oh.
Yeah. You don't have to full solid.
See, that's how we are. It's all or nothing. Like, I'm either going to run across that finish line or I'm not doing it.
Well, we're going to run across the finish line and anywhere people could see us.
Right.
No.
But camera's on. Hurry up.
Yeah. But I've been watching a lot of because the London Marathon just happened, which I thought this was interesting. Did you know that the people who ran in the London Marathon this last time also are now in the Guinness World Record book because it was the largest marathon ever?
Oh, I did not know that.
I know. I was like, that's interesting.
Oh,
but if you
got to find one of those then.
Yeah, I've been run or talk basically, and a lot of people talk about how they will run walk.
Oh,
yeah, it's normal.
I didn't even know that was an option. All right.
Yes. Yeah.
Count me in then, and I'm in. Yeah.
Well, I've been running for a year and a month because I started running a month before I got sober. It was weird too because people were like, why are you running? I was like, I don't know. And then obviously it took me through those first few months because I would just cry and run.
Wow.
Yeah. So, but when I started, I couldn't.
Good for you. There's no way I could have ran in my first year. There's no way. I could barely get out of bed.
It was saving me. It was literally saving me.
That's
and my
awesome.
son would come at the time back then too when I was just running these shorter. He tapped out after I got a certain point. When I couldn't run a whole minute. Like that was hard for me. And he would come run that and he'd be like, what are you doing, Mom? It was so cute.
That is cute.
Yeah. So having him, and then a lot of times I'd run solo, but like, yeah, it totally saved me.
That's amazing.
Yeah. But no, if you can run like...
I could barely the first 90 days, it was like all I could do to get up and go to work. Like that was all I could do.
Well, it's a mental disorder I have.
Yeah.
I was like, well, I am sober now. I'm also going to run marathons and,
That's our all or nothing.
Hunger.
And we're going to
yeah.
That's how we go. That's how we do.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. But wrapping up here, you've got some incredible books.
Thank you.
I think you said I could give some away.
I would love to give. So this month is Mental Health Awareness Month.
Okay. Can I give some away on my Insta or my TikTok?
I would love to give a set away on your thing. Yeah.
Okay.
So one of each. I would love to give away on your...
Okay. So
you can even give away 2 sets if you want.
Let's do it. I'll give away 2 sets. I have a lot of people who follow me on Sobriety TikTok. I will talk about your books. We will give them away because they're really powerful.
Thank you.
And your story needs to be shared.
I love that.
But thanks for taking the time on Thursday.
Thank you for having me.
This has been
so fun.
Put down your Lady Broker Boss.
I know.
T-shirt. I don't know what you have.
Yeah. Now I got to go back to be boss lady.
I know. I'm like my phone. I'm like, phones.
I know.
But yeah, thanks for your time today. And thanks for sharing your story. Me. And I don't know, just thanks for being willing to be my friend again.
I love you.
Me too.